I'm presenting 3 sculptures, of which each one has a different aspect of collecting history and provenance. And I will discuss how interesting the approach to provenance is and how much you can read out of the piece itself. So here we stand in front of a head of Apollo, which comes from the Sandberg family. Mr. Sandberg was a Norwegian industrialist and patron of the arts, consul in Germany for Norwegia, and was painted several times by Munch. And as a patron of the art, it's logical, but he collected also antiquities, and this was acquired in a sale in Scandinavia, which is logical. So this Apollon head has a history going back to the Sandberg family, turn of the century, about 1900, something like that, and is in very good condition, and a wonderful piece in itself. But the history is that we know where it comes from, because the consigners come from that family. When we walk to the next one, we have much more details in the piece itself of an old collecting history. When I acquired the piece, which I bought because of the collection history being at least visible in the traces of sawn-off arms, smooth surfaces where it broke, filling in marble, typical technique of the 19th, if not 18th or 17th century, and cut here, wonderful, torso of Ganymede. I didn't know the history, and the auction house kindly afterwards informed me that they in the meantime had also found out that it was in the archive of Paul Arndt. Paul Arndt was a German archaeologist, assistant to the famous Adolf Furtwängler, excavator of Olympia, and he was a collector, archaeologist in the 1920s, passed away in 34, and he has photographs where you see all the reconstructions still hanging on the piece. So a head of Ganymede, possibly an 18th century restoration. And we get news that there may be even an older history to the piece, going back to the 16th century. So this is a piece where when I bought it because it had clear traces of an old provenance, but nothing else. And through coincidence and research, more came out afterwards, after the acquisition. But it says, when you buy a piece and it has traces of an old provenance, you should go ahead, because it shows that it's been found many hundred years ago. This is the case, for example, of this fantastic Dionysus, which is a very grand piece. Now, when I acquired it, it was very different. It was very dirty, but also he stood upright. He was very, very bizarre, actually quite ugly. He stood straight there, and the head was reconstructed, which helped a lot to determine the age of the restoration. This part in plaster was added to it, quite an ugly thing, and it looked very bizarre. So that's the way he looked. And this plaster restoration is a technique which is typically late 19th century. Beforehand they would have smoothed, like the Ganymede I showed you, they would have smoothed the surfaces and reconstructed it in marble. Here they choose plaster, and I took this off because this is much more pure. And then, see how it is done here. Not very attractive, but you have to keep it. And then we dismantled the whole statue in its elements, because it was clear that it was wrongly mounted. And we discovered, by disentangling everything, we hanged it up, and we found actually a small surface about that much where it joined. And suddenly the position changed completely. The sculpture walked forward and became ponderated, which is the correct position. And the whole character of the sculpture gained enormously. It is now Dionysus walking towards you. It was wrongly described as Artemis. Well, there is no bosom, and it's clearly Dionysus with his animal, the panther, as his companion. So when I acquired the piece, there was an indicative that it's from an old collection, and we can go back to Mr. Richter in Jerusalem and New York, but not beforehand. But the plaster reconstruction of this part shows it's clearly 19th century from the technique. So we have three different situations of collection history. In all cases, we had to search and find elements helping us. And this is very typical for Greek and Roman sculpture. Very often they have a lost history, and the only proof that they have been around for a long, long time are old restoration traces. The written documents are lost, the invoices are lost, but this is remaining, so intrinsic proof within the piece itself.